Okay. All right. So the oven is all set up. You guys know the main power switch is in the back right. You just flip that up in the morning or whenever. You can leave it on all day if you want to, or if you don't want to do that, when you send your image to the milling unit, turn the oven on. By the time the crown's done milling, you'll be able to use it. It takes about 6 or 8 minutes for the temperature to heat up. It tells you right here at the top of the screen what the temperature is. Um, so once it's heated up, then you can use it. Okay. Your screwdriver button here. This is where all your maintenance things are. So once a year, you have to do a recalibration. This right here is a calibration pin that you have to use. This is only good for a one-time use. So you use this and then you throw it out, order another one. You only have to do the calibration once a year and only when the oven tells you to. So like you'll turn it on in about 8 months and you'll get a little error message that says time to recalibrate. Okay. To do the calibration, I'll just quickly show you. You can always call me. I can come back and walk you through it. It is in the manual. But what you'll do is you'll take this table out right here. Okay. Then you're going to grab the calibration pin with the tongs like this. You're going to drop it into the center hole right there. Okay. Then after you drop it down there, then you're going to grab the pin and you're going to push it down until you feel the click, until you feel it click into place. Okay. You'll feel it click in. The metal pronged end will still be sticking out of the top right here. Once the pin is inserted, you go into the screwdriver button, your tools button here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to screen 4/20. It says temperature calibration. It shows you the pin right there. So once the pin is inserted, you just hit the enter button and then I think start twice, and it will run the calibration. It takes about an hour and a half to run the calibration. You don't have to do it that immediate second. You can do it at the end of the day or the end of the week whenever you have free time. Okay. After the time runs out on the hour and a half, pull the pin out, set it down on the ledge to cool off. Once it cools off, just toss it, order a new one for next time. Okay. Very
Now,
simple.
if it errors out saying, you know, it needs to be calibrated, we can escape out of that and still run a cycle?
You would hit the escape button, it would take you out of that, and you could still use the oven
Okay.
like you normally would.
All right.
Yep, no problem with that. So you can do it at the end of the day or the end of the week, whenever you have time. Otherwise, this table stays in pretty much all the time. The only time you take it out is to do the calibration.
Does it matter where that groove is on
No,
the
it
table?
really doesn't.
Okay.
If you prefer it on the other side, you can turn it that way. All right, so this is your open and close button right here. Under the screwdriver button, there's some, some of the other maintenance issues that may come up. If you're running your grinder a lot and you're getting a lot of debris trapped in the hood, you might get an error saying the oven needs to clean. Or if you run the sink a lot and it gets moisture trapped in the hood, you might get an error that says you need to dehumidify. All the fixes are going to be under the screwdriver button, the tools button, and you just scroll through to find it. So for dehumidification, or for a cleaning program would be 16. You would just hit enter and start. Dehumidification is 17/20. If you get that message, you just hit enter and start. So really easy to fix whatever error it's giving you.
But it will give you that error.
It will, yep, and you don't need to do anything unless you get prompted by the oven that something needs to be done.
But you hung up at that point where you're going to have to dehumidify it before you run the next cycle?
No, all of the programs, it's just letting you know it should be done at some point, but you don't have to do it before the next crown.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The I button is just for information, telling you have the current software, which is 3.0, which is the 14-minute Emacs program. Then it'll just keep track like a car would mileage. So you got 0 firing hours, 12 operating hours, 0 vacuum hours. Every time you do the calibration, it'll save the date. This is European style here, so February 28th, 2013 was the last time it was calibrated. Calibration values, just telling you uses 120 volts power. That's basically it, okay? Escape gets you out of there. Now you have the programs down here at the bottom. There are 20 total programs on this oven. Only 7 of the programs are actually programmed. So you have 13 open programs that you could use for other materials. P1 is going to be, if you want to glaze 3 or more Emacs crowns at one time, you're going to use the P1 setting. That's a 25-minute setting. If you do use, if you are glazing 3 or more Emacs, you want to use the big Emacs tray, this one here, on P1. Okay, 25 minutes. P2 is your correction firing program for Emacs. So If Emax has already been sintered, you've already fired it once, and then you want to go back and add a contact, or you want to add more stain and glaze to it. Anytime you're going to refire Emax for a second time, you want to run it on the correction firing program. That's P2. It's about 18 minutes. We are working on cutting some time off of that program.
So you shouldn't run it on the P3 then?
No, they say to run it on the correction program because the P3 has a crystallization phase in it that you don't need because it's already been crystallized. All right, P3 is going to be your most common program for Emax. You can run 1 or 2 Emax crowns at a time on this program. It's 14 minutes. One of the big things with this P3 program, it has a higher starting temperature than some of the other programs. So P3, you want to make sure the temperature is at 550 C before you open up the oven to put the crowns in. If it's not at 550, it's going to wind up taking longer than 14 minutes. Some of the other programs usually start out around 400 C, so that's something to keep note of.
So how do you make sure it's going to be at 550 when you start?
So if you know you're gonna do 1 Emax crown, turn the oven on and just select P3. That way the temperature will raise up, and while you
so the holding temperature will
Yep, whatever program you select down here, the temperature will raise up to whatever it should be starting at. Okay. So you can see it actually says ready when it gets to 500. You still want to wait till it hits 550. Okay. That's important to note. So, okay. P4 is going to be for your Empress crowns. So if you want to glaze Empress, you could put up to 5 Empress crowns in at one time on P4. It's a 12-minute firing program, and Empress will increase in strength 10 to 20% if you glaze and fire it. Okay. Then the P with the arrow right here is to get you to the next programs. P5 is an Emax CAD-on fusion program. This is for fusing an Emax bridge to a zirconia substructure. We launched the CAD-on, and we were recommending you use a zirconia substructure. So if you do it this way, P5 is the fusion process. It takes about 40 minutes to do that actual fusion. Okay. If you're not going to be using zirconia and you just want to stain and glaze an Emax bridge, P6 is the program that you want to use. Okay. It's about it's a little under 30 minutes. It's about 28-minute firing program. That's for 3-unit Emax bridges, stain and glaze.
Solid
Yep.
Emax.
Yep.
Okay.
One piece. Okay. P7 is going to be for Emax Impulse. Impulse is 5 new shades of Emax that we came out with about a year ago, strictly for anteriors. There's 3 value shades for anterior crowns, and there's 2 opal shades for anterior veneers. They have a little bit more fluorescence and value than the standard Emax does. However, we recommend using it over a very light stump. If your stump is too dark, it's going to be too see-through on the Impulse material. But there is a 30-minute firing program for Impulse. Okay, it's a niche product. If you have a real, aesthetic anterior case, the Impulse, would probably be a good bet to check out.
How does it compare to like Empress as far as?
I think the aesthetics I think are exactly like Empress. Yeah. I think Empress is the most aesthetic ceramic on the market, and so that's what we were trying to achieve with the Impulse, just a little bit more aesthetic than the standard version. And then that's it. So these are all open programs, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 20. So these are all open. If you're going to be glazing some other type of material, we can put that program in for you. I don't know if you glaze Vita or are interested in that, but I can put a program in here for you.
Yeah, we've got a ton of Vita still. We don't do a lot anymore, but...
No problem. I'll put that in there for you. Okay, so those are all the programs. Now, as far as the demonstration, okay, what you want to do here is you want to select a pin size for the crown. So usually if it's a molar posterior crown, I usually like to use the widest pin that will fit into here. Of course, you've probably used these before. The circle end right here is what's going to go into the tray, so you just want to make sure you don't stick that end into the putty. I like to use the Object Fix Flow. It's a little bit more flowable than the Object Fix Putty. I have a good little trick with this that I think works pretty good. So with the flow, what you want to do is you want to fill it right up to the margin. The Object Fix does 3 things. It prevents the crown from shrinking or distorting when it's being sintered. It seals the margin so you don't get glaze up under it, and it helps to hold on to the pin. So what I do is sometimes I'll just squirt a tiny bit out. It can be a little runny at first.
We use the flow, right?
Okay, cool. So then I'll just fill it right up to the margin, maybe even a little bit higher. Always put the cap back on this stuff right away because it'll dry out quick on you if you don't. Okay, then I'll take the pin and I'll just insert it right in the center like this. Balance it out a little bit. Then what I'll do is I'll take an instrument and I'm kind of just going to move the putty around a little bit here. So I'm just going to kind of get it out of my way a little bit so that I'm not hitting it with my brush when I'm glazing. Just kind of pushing the putty down towards the stem of the pin a little bit. Okay, just getting it out of the way. Okay, then what I like to do is, to get this putty to set, what I'll actually do is open up the oven and I'm going to stick this under the hood for about 10 or 15 seconds. That will dry out that putty and set it so that it's not moving all over the place, wobbling when I go to put the glaze on. All of your heat is coming out of the top portion of the hood here, so I'm just holding the crown right up into the center area here, just kind of rotating it back and forth for about 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, then make sure you close the oven after you do that because you want to make sure you get the temperature back up to where it's supposed to be. Okay, this is the small tray that you want to use on your P3 program. So 1 or 2 Emax crowns, we're going to use small tray. 2 or more Emax crowns, big tray, and P1. Just gonna
so you never use the P3 with a big tray then?
Right, exactly. Okay, now my palette right here, I have the glaze paste right here, and I have a little bit of a sunset stain that I like for the occlusal surface. Back in the corner I have some glaze liquid. I personally don't like to mix the glaze liquid into the glaze. Some technicians do. It might help to settle the glaze a little bit, but I feel like you can get a good thin enough consistency just by hand mixing it. If you add too much liquid into the glaze, sometimes it doesn't burn off properly and you get little pitting or bubbling or things like that. I do use the liquid to clean my brushes when I'm done, or if I leave this palette out for a couple of days, there's no shelf life on the stain and glaze, and then I come back to use it and I feel like the glaze hardened up a little bit, then I'll mix a tiny drop of liquid into the glaze, and in that case I would just dip my brush into the liquid and then mix it in. I don't put drops directly into it, okay? So I take the back end of my brush here and I'm going to give this glaze a good mix. You want to mix it pretty vigorously for 10-15 seconds, maybe even longer, 20-30 seconds or so. This stuff is real pasty. It's got a heavy consistency to it, so you really want to loosen it up. Give it a good mix. Okay. You want to get it to almost like a honey type consistency. Same thing for any stains. If you're working with stains, you don't have to mix that quite as long. I just give that about a 5-second mix or so. Okay, just get that carrier that's inside there to mix into it. Alright, now we're ready to apply the material. It's very important when you're applying this Emax glaze paste to put just a very thin layer of it on. If you apply too heavy of a coat of glaze, you're going to get little pitting or bubbling in it. Okay, so just a real thin coat. So what I'll do is I'll just work on applying the glaze to the crown. I like to try to go in the same direction with my brush. That way, you don't get as many brush strokes on there. I do go over the same spot quite a few times so that I can thin that coat down so that I'm not leaving a thick coat on there. You can see where you're applying the glaze because it's shiny. Whenever you're working with the glaze paste, you want to apply the glaze first and then work your stain into it after that.
Do you want to try our stuff and see how it cooks compared to that? Because we're going to cook this, right?
I was going to fire this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So let's do one. You do one and we'll do one.
Okay. Sure. Yep. We can
try it.
fire them at the same time.